even as he tries desperately to wind down his war of choice that is raising prices and tanking his very own poll numbers. He's also claiming yet again today he, quote, won this war. Try to make sense of that. He made this bombastic announcement on social media today saying, quote, assuming Iran agrees to give what has been agreed to, which is perhaps a big assumption, the already legendary epic fury will be at an end and the highly effective blockade will allow the Hormuz Strait to be open to all, including Iran. If they don't agree, the bombing starts, and it will be, sadly, at a much higher level and intensity than it was before. This comes after Donald Trump paused his failed attempt to escort commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. Today, Iran's foreign minister confirmed to that country's semi-official news agency that Iran's leaders are considering the U.S. proposal to resume peace talks. However, another Iranian official earlier dismissed a reported proposal to end the war as a, quote, list of American wishes, according to the New York Times. An official in Pakistan, where peace talks were being held before Donald Trump called them off, told MS Now that a proposal to end the war is very likely in the coming days. Two U.S. officials and two other sources briefed on the issue tell Axios, quote, the White House believes it's getting close to an agreement with Iran on a one-page memorandum of understanding to end the war and set a framework for more detailed nuclear negotiations. In its current form, the memorandum would declare an end to the war in the region and the start of a 30-day period of negotiations on a detailed agreement to open the strait, limit Iran's nuclear program, and lift U.S. sanctions. Iran's restrictions on shipping through the strait and the U.S. naval blockade would be gradually lifted during that 30-day period, according to a U.S. official. Axios also points out, quote, many of the terms laid out in the memo would be contingent on a final agreement being reached, leaving the possibility of renewed war or an extended limbo in which the hot war has stopped, but nothing is truly resolved. Today, Donald Trump said this about a potential deal.
We're in good shape. And now we're doing well. Now we have to get what we have to get. If we don't do that, we'll have to go a big step further. But with that being said, they want to make a deal. We've had very good talks over the last 24 hours, and it's very possible that we'll make a deal.
Very possible. Before that, he told a New York Post reporter that it's too soon to start thinking about face-to-face peace talks with Iran. Again, no consistency, no strategy, seemingly just chaos and confusion from the man in control of the most powerful military on planet Earth dealing with a war that he started, and he still cannot explain why. According to a Washington Post analysis of satellite imagery, Iranian airstrikes have damaged or destroyed at least 228 structures or pieces of equipment at U.S. military sites across the Middle East since the war began, hitting hangars and barracks and fuel depots, aircraft, key radar, communications, and air defense equipment. The amount of destruction is far larger than what has been publicly acknowledged by the United States government or previously reported. That all seems to have come at the expense of hitting Iran's nuclear program, which has not been diminished, despite the war, as Reuters reported yesterday. Quote, the unchanging estimate of how long it would take Iran to build such a weapon reflects in part the focus of the latest U.S. and Israeli military campaign, the sources said. While Israel has struck nuclear-related targets, including a uranium processing facility in late March, U.S. attacks have concentrated on conventional military capabilities, Iran's leadership, and its military-industrial base. And damage or no damage, hitting all of those targets cost a lot of dollars. Your taxpayer dollars. Today, in a letter, a group of House Democrats are demanding answers from Donald Trump about the cost of his war, writing this. The impacts of your war will be felt for years, and the consequences of your reckless decision to drag America into war are increasingly falling on the American public. Consumer prices reached their fastest growth in almost 2 years as a spike in oil costs began feeding into the broader economy. Gas prices and household expenses are increasing, and your war has already cost taxpayers approximately $2 billion per day during the initial phase of attacks. Amid a worsening affordability crisis, Americans deserve to know whether your administration considered the many ways your war would increase the day-to-day cost of living and what steps you are now taking to protect Americans from the fallout of your foolhardy rush to war. What about gas prices? Gas prices jumped another 6 cents overnight to a national average of $4.54 a gallon. That is up $1.38 over a year ago, according to AAA. What about here, where I am, in California? I filled up my tank of gas on the way to this studio. The statewide average for a regular, unleaded gallon of gas is $6.16. Tonight, new polling shows that Americans have soured on Donald Trump's handling of his war and how it has driven gas prices up to near record highs. 60% of Americans disapprove of how Donald Trump is handling the war in Iran. 61% disapprove of his handling of the economy, and 63% do not believe the U.S. economy is working well for them. Get this, a staggering 81% say that higher gas prices has caused a strain on their household budget. And Politico is reporting that diesel fuel costs are also poised to set an all-time high in the United States, which in turn is expected to drive up prices for everything from groceries to postage. A spike in diesel fuel affects a wide array of commodities that need to move across the country, including for home building, for manufacturing, and much more. And it could not come at a worse time for President Donald Trump and Republicans just months ahead of the contentious midterm election season. Donald Trump's economic advisor accidentally pointed out that Americans cannot afford basic necessities when he said this today.
Just as Secretary Bessent said, credit card spending is through the roof. They're spending more on gasoline, but they're spending more on everything else, too.
I'm no economist, but quick economic lesson for you guys. It is not a sign of a healthy economy if Americans are going into debt to pay for things they need every single day, like gas and food. Listen to these voters.
The whole economy is not working for the middle class person like I am. And I'm also on Social Security. I worry about my Social Security benefits.
You look at the price at the gas pump and you're like, wow, is that real? I guess it is. So you try to avoid it a little bit. You don't fill it up all the way.
This should be responsive. We should be able to have, if we can't afford to go to work, what do?
I go in a grocery store, something I used to go in there and buy for $30 is costing me $60, and I don't see the reason for it.
If you were tuned into this very network on Friday afternoon, you saw me out at the May Day March here in Los Angeles. Listen to what one teacher told me as he walked the streets of L.A.
The sign says fund education, not war. Why are you holding this sign today?
I mean, because Trump is putting us on the brink of an economic crisis when he should be investing in things that help improve our economy.
Are you a teacher?
I am. I teach at both UC Irvine and UCLA. I'm a non-tenure track teacher, so they call us freeway flyers.
Good luck to you. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Fund education, not war, his sign said. Donald Trump was also fixated on all of the wrong things today during a military Mother's Day event in the White House when he went on a long tangent about, you guessed it, his ballroom.
I'm good at ballrooms, and we're giving you I believe it's the best. It will be the best ever built, and it will have windows that are thicker than any ballroom I've ever built. I usually have glass that's about 1/4 of an inch thick. This is about 6 inches thick. This can repel a lot of different weapons, but it's going to be incredible. It's going to be, aside from being secure, it's going to be I think it's going to be the most beautiful ballroom ever built.
Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. He is a member of the Judiciary and Foreign Relations Committees. It's great to see you, Senator Booker.
Thanks. It's so good to be on with you tonight.
Thanks so much. It is so hard to keep track of what Donald Trump is saying about what is happening in Iran. What do you make of where negotiations stand right now, given the dizzying messages coming out of the president's mouth?
I mean, that's the problem. I mean, he has not stated clearly any kind of objective. He's now talking about some kind of plan that's going to end this. But all we have, the case that we have, is a framework that's going to carry on negotiations even further. Remember, They started this whole thing when they were at a negotiating table. And now, after tens of billions of dollars, 13, 14 American lives, hundreds injured, billions and billions of dollars in cost, every American paying higher prices, not just at the gas pump, but even for consumer goods, this president still has nothing to show for this unconstitutional war that Americans are paying dearly for.
And you've continually tried to put forward this war powers resolution unsuccessfully. What do you think the president of the United States can realistically get on the nuclear front with Iran compared to what we had under the deal during the Obama administration?
Yeah, I mean, look, the deal for the Obama administration was able to force them to send out of country their nuclear highly enriched materials. It got unbelievable inspection regimes there, snap inspections, cameras at their facilities, the International Atomic Energy Commission able to have full access to their facilities. And then as a result of that, they really had no more highly enriched uranium. Donald Trump tore up that deal, and the Iranians raced to get highly enriched uranium. Donald Trump then said that was the reason he bombed. He said he completely obliterated their program, and then just months later he said, no, we got to go to war over it. So I don't trust this president. He has lied to the American people. He said he would keep us out of wars. He's got us in one. He said he would lower people's prices. Prices are going really far up. He has shown his inability to end a war and to achieve goals and ends, which have shifted on him every single day. America is not being served by a man who should not be the commander in chief. Maybe he should have a full-time job designing ballrooms somewhere. Unfortunately, this is a mockery, a Marie Antoinette guy. While he's focused on a ballroom, we're all suffering the higher costs as a result of his ill-gotten war.
Well, why don't we talk about that? What do you make of Republicans, your fellow members of the Judiciary Committee seeking $1 billion for Trump's ballroom while this war just continues to exacerbate oil prices?
I mean, that's the challenge. It would be bad enough to have a president that has the kind of inclinations to hurt Americans with higher prices, taking away their health care, getting us into an ill-gotten war. But what makes this all the worse is his enablers in Congress. People who have said exactly the opposite of what they're allowing Donald Trump to do. They said they care about this country's engagement and staying out of wars, and they've allowed him to go into one unconstitutionally. They're not doing their job of checks and balances, oversight and accountability. So I have a lot of blame for Donald Trump for getting us into this. I have even higher blame for Republicans that are enabling him to do it and not doing their constitutional duty, not protecting American citizens from his chaotic tariffs and the prices that he's driving up. This is unfortunately a moment where we know is going to go down in history, not just for a president that's done disastrously wrong things, but for Republicans in Congress that allowed him to continue to do it.
The foreign minister of Iran was in China today. What level of concern do you have about our adversaries growing closer together as the Trump administration continues to isolate everybody else that are our allies?
Yeah, look, he's empowering China. He's empowering Russia. Remember, Russia, when he said he was going to pull troops out of Germany, they were the happiest people in all of Europe because they've wanted to undermine NATO for a long time. Donald Trump is doing it for them. And now with China, he is actually strengthening the ties between Iran and China. He's already allowed China to give Iran billions of dollars for oil. And this meeting that the two of them are having should be very concerning for all Americans who are concerned about what's going on in Iran and concerned about China's growing strength and influence on the world stage. And so I'm not sure what's going to come out of that, but I know we do not have a president capable of meeting the threats that are being poised by folks who every day want to know how they can undermine us or overtake us, as in China and Russia.
Senator Cory Booker, if you can, stick around because I want to talk to you more after the break about what Republicans in these southern states are doing tonight in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act. That's coming up next. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back. That is State Senate President pro tempore Louise Lucas. Lucas has been a driving force behind Virginia Democrats' efforts to redraw the Commonwealth's congressional map, a plan that Virginia voters passed in a recent referendum. Republican allies of Donald Trump are now challenging that new map in court. And Democrats believe the new map, again, a plan passed by Virginia voters that is central to all of this, could eventually put as many as 4 additional House seats in their column in the midterms. Tonight, Donald Trump's Justice Department is offering little public explanation about exactly what investigators were actually looking for in that raid on the office of Louise Lucas. The search, overseen by FBI Director Kash Patel, unfolded while somehow, some way, Fox News cameras were already positioned outside of Lucas's office to capture the whole thing. What a coincidence. No charges have been filed. According to the New York Times, 2 people familiar with the case said the search was related to an investigation opened during the Biden administration that has continued, examining possible corruption and bribery related to marijuana dispensary businesses. Still, the political backdrop is impossible to ignore. Donald Trump has repeatedly framed the Justice Department as his Justice Department, a tool for political retribution, for threatening rivals, for targeting perceived enemies, demanding loyalty from federal agents. MS Now political contributor Steve Bannon writes this today. This is why we don't politicize federal law enforcement. Because even if the underlying case is legitimate, it is impossible to avoid the larger context and the degree to which this looks like a retaliatory investigation against a Democrat launched by a weaponized department known for its retaliatory investigations against Democrats. Last night on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, former President Barack Obama, you can't have a situation in which whoever is in charge of the government starts using that to go after their political enemies or reward their friends. In the wake of the Supreme Court ruling gutting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, Republicans across the South are racing to redraw congressional maps ahead of the midterms. In Tennessee, Republicans have unveiled a proposed map that Democrats say would effectively eliminate the last remaining Democratic congressional seat in the entire state. That is Congressman Steve Cohen's Memphis district. And in South Carolina, Republicans are now moving towards a special legislative session that could target the state's only congressional district currently held by a Democrat, not any Democrat, the legendary Congressman James Clyburn, who marched and was arrested fighting for civil rights in the 1960s. Back with us is Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. And Senator Booker, this whole thing with the South Carolina Republicans, aided, by the way, by the Supreme Court, could dismantle the state's lone Democratic district. It's crazy to even say it, represented by Jim Clyburn. What is your reaction to that?
It's very personal to me because I walk into the United States Senate as just the 4th black person popularly elected to that body after Barack Obama, who's number 3. And it's never lost on me the kind of sacrifices that Americans from all backgrounds had to make it possible for me to walk on that floor. I just came back from Alabama yesterday where I met foot soldiers of the movement. I met a woman that was on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I was reminded of people like Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner out trying to fight for people's voting rights who were killed and were the subject of that movie, Mississippi Burning. All of these efforts were to stop what had been going on for almost a century after the Civil War, which was the complete evisceration of blacks' voting rights, black representation. And now here we have 6 unelected individuals who, after millions of Americans joined together in a movement to create fairness, now they have gutted the Voting Rights Act that so many fought for and many died for, and are going to send us back to a world where entire states that have 20, 30, 40% almost, as in Louisiana, a third of their population is African American. But now we might be seeing a day where, yet again, like in that post-Reconstruction period, there are no blacks representing those states. This is an insult and an injury to our history. This is us trying to be thrown back to an era that we fought so hard to get out of. It is wrong. And the one thing I'm going to disagree with the great Barack Obama, the only thing I'm going to disagree with is we have seen the FBI go after people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. We have seen them violate laws in the past. But just like when they bombed a church in Birmingham, just like when they beat and terrorized African Americans in the past, we did overcome. We overcame because we refused to give up. That even on the bleakest days, people rose up from all backgrounds and beat not just the FBI that was being used to intimidate, but actually overcame the Supreme Court and their past bad decisions like Plessy versus Ferguson or Korematsu. The people ultimately persevered, and that's what we have to do now.
I want to read you, Senator Booker, what Time Magazine writes about the court's ruling last week, which struck down Louisiana's electoral map. It weakened a core provision of the landmark law, it says, opening the door for Republicans, especially in southern states, to eliminate majority-minority districts in order to draw new voting lines that could help the Republicans win additional House seats. When you look, Senator Booker, at what is happening in South Carolina and Tennessee and in other places, how interconnected do you believe all of this is? Do you see isolated redistricting fights or this coordinated Republican strategy where now discrimination is effectively legal under the law as it relates to keeping people away from polling places?
Yeah, I try not to see this as a left-right issue. I think this strikes to the core of what Americans believe in. And I have faith that Americans believe ultimately in the idea of fair elections, fair representation, that this democracy should be a democracy that is loyal to those vaunted ideals. What the Republicans are doing is anti-democratic. And I'll never forget that, remember, we voted on this to end partisan gerrymandering. And it was, in the Senate and the House, a party line vote. Democrats all voted, let's get rid of partisan gerrymandering. Republicans all voted for it. And Donald Trump, who's this accelerant, it said, you know what, we're not only going to partisan gerrymander, but we're going to unleash upon this country this race to the bottom so that I can try to fix an election that I can't win fairly. And so we have to, again, see this as more than just Democrat or Republican. This is a movement, yet again, for the soul of our country, for the strength of our democracy. And this midterm election, just 6 months away now, is really going to be the great test. Do we sit idly by and watch people torch our Constitution and twist its greatest ideals? Or do we come out resoundingly and push back like generations before when our country was in the balance and at a crossroads? Do we come out with a chorus of conviction and say, no, not on our watch. We're going to stop this Republican Party that is way off the rails from doing any more damage to our democracy?
Senator Cory Booker, a real pleasure talking to you tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up, Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was grilled over his past untrue statements about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein in a closed-door hearing with the House Oversight Committee. Our next guest, Congressman Ro Khanna, was in that room and believed. Today, Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick testified before the House Oversight Committee in a closed-door transcribed interview about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. A person familiar with his interview told MS Now that Lutnick told the committee that he had no personal or professional relationship with Epstein. Lutnick, who was Jeffrey Epstein's next-door neighbor on Manhattan's Upper East Side for 14 years, said he had 3 meetings with Epstein. Last year, Lutnick described why he says he made the decision to cut ties with Epstein after one of those meetings at Epstein's home in 2005, where, according to Lutnick, Epstein made a suggestion table in his home.
In the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Oh, so I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Because he's gross. The Justice Department release of the Epstein files showed that all of that was a lie. Lutnick remained in contact with Epstein and visited his island years after he claims that he vowed to, quote, never be in a room with that disgusting person ever again. Secretary Lutnick is not accused of any criminal wrongdoing and said today that he never saw Epstein with any young women and never witnessed anything inappropriate with young women. In a statement, James Marsh, an attorney who represents survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, said, quote, the interview of Howard Lutnick, while a step toward potential clarity, does not provide any real substance for identifying the perpetrators of Epstein's network or pathways to justice for survivors. Lutnick has already misrepresented his relationship with Jeffrey